All right, so let's kick off for our next episode of Basecamp. Today, we're going to be talking all about development planning using PI. So this is a really sort of like an accelerator on, we've understood what drives and motivates somebody, but how do we look at, well, what are the opportunities for development for you? Where can we help you grow and coach you and give you that sort of step up in your own leadership journey and just your development as an individual? Now, in terms of what I wanted to cover today, I wanted to make sure that we followed a bit of a flow around development planning. So the first thing I always recommend we look at is actually assessing the individual's personal purpose, their goals, their lifestyles. And often this is a piece that's really missing in development planning. We love to jump right in and say, tell us about where you want to be at work. And we forget to really look at the individual. And this is actually really them outside of life. This is, outside of work. It's them as a whole person. What is their purpose? Maybe why did they originally join the organization? What are they looking for in terms of a lifestyle? And we're going to talk a little bit about that next. And then how do we take their future goals for themselves and then transition it across and look at things like skills, relationship, knowledge, experience, capabilities. And again, I'm going to give you another whole mapping of things that you can be looking at. And then aligning it to the organization, because what we need to do is make sure that we can leverage that person. And whilst they are growing, that the organization is seeking benefit at the same time. It's of mutual benefit to both parties that they're going to go on that development journey. And also, what are the resources available? Every organization is going to have different options for people. So what are those resources? Who could be those mentors? What software technology do we have available? What training programs do we have? What can we do within our organization and also outside our organization to support you in that development journey? So you'll see there's sort of three pieces here. And then looking at, well, let's overlay all those things and create a plan. What are we going to do? And we're going to use the 70-20-10 model to do that. And I've got a fourth element on that 70-20-10 model for us to explore today. I love the Head Heart Briefcase. That's very much aligned with what we often do with you here at Red Wolf Group. Is we love to talk about the skills, knowledge, capability, the experiences they bring with them. And this is just so very deep. There's so many things that goes into someone's briefcase. Technical, industry knowledge, experience, and also capability. How much ownership, independence can they have over projects and tasks? So talking about their seniority almost. Can we leave you alone to do this, give you a brief and let you execute, or do you need a lot more hand holding and coaching and development? That forms your briefcase. And then we've got the heart, the values, the ethics, and also attitudes of an individual. What's their mindset? And we know during COVID, this mindset piece is really starting to play a big piece on a lot of people and actually pretty much everybody. What is our mindset and how can we really get focused in terms of what are some of our priorities? How do we flex work into our lifestyles now with a lot more remote work? And then as we go into the head, the behaviors and the cognitive piece, looking at, we know through the PI assessment, we can do all of these things. We can look at communication, influencing, problem solving, really looking at what drives and behaviors you have at work, and therefore how can we best motivate and inspire you, and what are some of the gaps. I'm going to talk about aligning a person to their job and areas for development that might come out. So the first thing we need to do with someone is to do a bit of a personal diagnostic, whatever word you want to use. The framework we like to use that we've put together is these four elements. You'll start to see a real theme around wheels on this session. So one is purpose. And I've given an example of someone's purpose statement here. So help design life-changing experience through holidays and activities with loved ones. So that might be a purpose of someone who might be working in the travel industry, that this is their personal purpose that then bleeds into their work purpose. What am I here for? Why do I want to turn up to work every day? And what do I want to achieve with my contribution over my life cycle at work? And then what are my passions and interests? What am I interested in? We do a lot of work with some clients in the venture capital, raising money. And so for them, when they're looking at people, they want people that not only want to work in the industry, but it's about that passion and interest in high net wealth individuals, in philanthropy, in founder environments, in startups. They're really interested in that industry. Or it might be, I am passionate about the travel industry. Well, that's great because we can align that into the work that you do. So for this individual, it might be travel, experience in different cultures, and really their interest is connecting with people. Then we go into financial and setting some goals. And I try and get people to remove the I want to be on X salary plus super or whatever it is. And I go a little bit beyond that. Why? Why do you want to earn a certain financial bracket? Is it status? Is it that you want to, have a certain lifestyle? But what is it? Is it that you're saving for a house, a car? You're trying to support your family? You're paying for school fees? Like, what is it? And sort of break those things down into a little bit more of a tangible layer, not I want this salary. Because again, if you're the manager of this person, you can start talking to them about how you're going. Have you started getting the mortgage together for the home loan? Like, where are you at? Have you house hunted? You guys can connect over some of these things as well. And then lifestyle. This is a really important thing. What is the lifestyle an individual is looking for? So in this example, I've just said here, quality time with family, to experience hobbies, care for my elderly parents, and some health and well-being goals that they might have. So you can see here, before we start like doing a deep dive into their head, heart, briefcase at work, we're starting to get a better picture of them as a whole person and what's important to them. And again, this is going to be a really great exercise for you as a manager, because sometimes we forget to have these conversations. As we transition into the development framework, again, we've got our nice wheel here and we've got 4 parts of this. So the first, on any development framework that you look at, there's always going to be an element of self-awareness. Self-awareness is a really key piece of leadership, but also your own development. And you can see here behaviors and needs. What is my drivers, motivating needs? How do I respond under crisis and stress? And also, what are my values, my ethics and attitude? And this is really important to be able to check into that. There's different ways to assess those things. We obviously use PI. There's things like emotional intelligence assessments. There's 360 reviews you could be doing on managers. Lots of different assessments can start to tick into this box here. We even, every now and then, we use values assessments, which are out in the marketplace. So again, these things can help develop someone's awareness. Okay, who am I? What's important to me? How do I cope under stress and pressure? We've got some of those tools in PI as well, in our crisis behaviours sheets that we can use. So that personal awareness is the most important starting piece. Let's understand who I am. And then we've got to transition into skills. What skills do I currently have, but also where am I trying to get to? So we break those down into technical skills, and that is a very broad bucket. That's everything from, it could be software. I need to learn this software. It could be, I need to and it could be a CRM. It could be, a HR software. It could be a variety of things. Technical skills are also things like sales methodology. So for salespeople, their technical skills is following a sales methodology and scripting and language choice. They're all technical skills that enable them to do their job. It could be development programs for developers. For engineers, they got to learn AutoCAD and different programs. So they're all bundled up under technical skills, and that will vary from role to role. And then there's industry skills. Do I have the right skill set for my industry? And also industry knowledge. And those things are all important. We can't just look at skills. We have to look at also the industries that you operate in and what are you doing to develop your skills. Yes, I may have gone to uni 10 years ago, but things change and evolve. We know that in a rapid environment, things are evolving very quickly. So what communities are you involved in? What network groups are you involved in? How are you learning from best practice thought leaders? Is it, and then we can start to think about how do you get that knowledge? Attending some conferences, doing webinars, joining industry membership groups. So there's lots of options there for people around how do we get that skill and knowledge. And as we go around into value and impact, it's important that we actually think about, well, what is my value to the organization? What value would I like to contribute to the organization? And what impact would I like to have on the business in terms of where the business is going, and how does my personal development actually start to impact not only my performance, but the performance of the organization? And depending on what frameworks the businesses use, whether it's OKRs or it's a cascading framework, it can also help, I guess, cover this conversation and say, well, look, the business is going into this direction. For me to not only develop myself, but it's also about helping the business get to where it goes. I need to learn about where we're heading. So again, putting a business lens on the conversation is really valuable. And then the team, what impact do I have on my teammates? Am I a coach? Am I mentoring somebody? Am I doing some lunch and learns with my group? How am I sharing my knowledge with others, or how am I participating in team knowledge transfer? And also the value and impact I have on my customers. And customer is a broad term because it also could be stakeholders if you're in a purely internal role. And how do I increase my value to others so that whenever they interact with me, they're seeing value and an impact. And then we go around to leadership and teamwork. So even if you're an individual contributor, we all know everybody can be a leader, but also that teamwork element. And these pieces are important as we look at our own development. And this is where we go into leadership qualities. What are the qualities that you have and also want to have? How do you want to be seen? When people describe you as a leader, what type of qualities are associated with that? Again, you can develop some leadership principles as an organization, but also there's using leadership programs, you can start to define those within an individual. And also thought leadership. So as I start to develop my skills, my industry knowledge, my impact within the business, how can I start to share my thought leadership with others through training, mentoring, or receiving that from others? And ultimately teamwork, how does this individual develop trust? So you can start to see that this is far beyond, what training course am I going to go on? Because often that's sort of the default conversation. People hear development planning, they hear usually three things: promotion, a new job title, salary amendment, and what training course are you going to give me? So they have a very, I guess, focused view, because I think stereotypically that's what when we think about career development, it's those three things. But once you start to frame these conversations and asking for them to contribute to these things, it starts to get them to think much more holistically about who they are as a person, who they are, the impact that they have, and therefore, what's the development plan need to look like? Because it's not just which training course am I going to go on. That's such a narrow view of what development is all about. So the last framework, by the way, leadership qualities, we can start to see some of those qualities come through in your behavioural assessment. As we go into actions and accountability, we need to think in this framework. So this is like, great, now we've got a really good idea of who you are, where you're at, but where you want to be. What skills do you want to have? What type of leadership would I like to be defined as? Now, how do I get there? How do I go from A to B? And this is where we need to design a plan that's built on 4 elements. It's the 70-20-10 model, but with a little bit of flavor to it with the feedback piece. So experience. What on-the-job experiences and assignments or projects can I participate in to give me those skills, knowledge, experience, leadership qualities, add value to the business? What can I do? And this is where, once you start to get into the doing, what do I need to do and achieve to prove I can be that? This is where we need to be focusing. As we go down into coaching, this is where you will get mentoring. This could be from your manager. It could be from others in the industry. You might be saying, look, I'm really passionate about the investment space or the travel industry or the IT space. Who am I going to get some coaching and mentoring from? Maybe I'm going to meet with them once a quarter. Maybe I'm going to set up some sort of arrangement with someone. Maybe I'm going to do some MBA work where I get some mentoring from someone else. I don't know. It'll depend on what you're trying to achieve. And this is getting, I guess, advice. This is definitely more the advice space because it is slightly different to the knowledge piece. The knowledge is the formal training. It's webinars, it's going to events, it's learning new things. The experience is putting it into practice, and coaching is getting that sort of feedback as well during that piece. And lastly, in the accountability plan, we need to constantly be getting feedback and checking in and saying, am I doing all the things that I set out to achieve? I've put this great plan together, but am I delivering on it? And am I achieving it? Am I moving it forward? Or am I just getting really caught up in the day-to-day? But that in itself, we often learn through experiences. So maybe some of your day-to-day projects are helping you get where you need to go. So we've covered the personal purpose and goals. We've then looked at, okay, how do we look at then, let's look at our areas for development. And finally, how do we define some actions and accountability plans around that? So these three things sit very neatly together and they're very much interconnected. When we do development planning, the conversation exists around all of these things. And it's important that there's obviously lots of depth in each of these, but it starts to give you some ideas of what development planning could look like in the organisation. But also now we can start to talk about, well, where does PI fit into all of this? I mean, PI fits into a number of areas, really, as we start to think about that personal, who am I, that self-awareness, but also around the gap between skills that you might have when we start to look at an individual's profile and their results. So let's go into PI and where we might be able to get some of this data from. So the first thing we talked about earlier on in that first wheel is looking at sort of my behaviours and needs, personal purpose, and this transitions over into the second wheel as well. But what drives and motivates me? How do I want to turn up to work every day? And also, how do I like to be managed? And what are my needs? So this management strategy guide that you can get out of the tool, this is about your needs. How should you motivate this person? You probably need to meet these needs. And this is important to have attached to your development plan, because what it does is we need to make sure that I'm still getting my needs met with my development plan. Because sometimes people think they want to go down a certain path and they realize actually none of my needs are being met. For example, I coached a general manager of sales. His progression was, I want to be a CEO. Like, that's where I want to go. But the thing I don't have is really great financial and an element of commercial experience. So I'm actually going to take a leap and I'm going to do this really heavy, like financial type of role at an executive level. And I'm going to do that for 2 years because I need that to become a CEO. And as soon as we looked at this management strategy guide and also their needs, like management strategies, what does this person needs? I'm like, you're not going to get any of those needs met in that role. It's high attention to detail. It's high repetitive. It's meticulous. It's heads down. You're not dealing with people. This person was a persuader type of profile, true sales manager. I said, you're going to be in an office, not dealing with anyone. You're going to hate this. Long and behold, 3 months later, yeah, I could sit there in the office, do it, but I hating it. And this is where sometimes our, I guess, career goals sometimes are a little bit misaligned with what are our motivating needs. So then you get to have conversations to say, well, how can we get that met whilst giving you that experience that you need? So I strongly encourage that your management strategy guide becomes a part of the conversation, and often at the end to say, if we go and do this action plan, are we still going to meet your needs here? And how can we check in and make sure that's the case? Areas for development, our personal development chart or management development chart, depending on if you're an individual contributor or a manager. This looks at our 4 factors and where we sit on those 4 factors and whether we're moderately high, moderately low, very extremely. What are the strengths and therefore what are the cautions? Now those cautions will come out a lot more often if it's sort of at that extreme end, very regular at the very and then just moderately if you're moderate. But what we have people do, like you can see here, is we give them the development plan. So when they're initially out sort of looking at their personal purpose, they're looking at their self-assessment piece, where am I at? We get them to take out their development chart and print it off, PDF it, whatever you want to do, and highlight the cautions that resonate with them. What are these things that actually they come out to play a little bit more often than they should? And I really want to work on those, especially if I'm under stress and pressure, they come out a lot. And you'll see there's some self-coaching tips there. So of the things I've highlighted in this person's development chart, may intimidate rather than motivate, and also may appear to be tough-minded and directive. So you can see here, practice active listening. We're going to pull that out and think of how your message will be received. And again, there's lots of coaching work we can do around that and putting it into the development chart. So what strategies are we going to come up with to help this person, not being so tough-minded and directive and telling people what to do all the time, and instead maybe asking 3 questions before they proceed. The power of all this is we can then, if you've profiled the jobs in your organization, you can overlay an individual to their role. And this is where it starts to get really, really interesting. Where are the gaps for that person? Where are they really well aligned? They're going to absolutely thrive. But where are some of these gaps? And you can see this individual, they've got the A over C factor combination. The B over A is obviously not quite right. This is A over B instead of B over A on the high side. We can see the role was more corporate hook. This person's got a D over C, so probably a lot more rigid than potentially the flexibility they might have been looking for. A little bit less tolerant of risk. The biggest issue there is probably going to be around the speed of connection with others in this role. This person will be highly analytical, great at problem solving, things like that, but they're probably not open to verbalizing their ideas potentially as much as the job needs. It might have lots of strong social connection. This is a public affairs manager. They're out talking to people all day, every day. How do they find that? So you can see I've highlighted some in the extroversion coaching questions. What needs to happen for you to be more vocal with your point of view? So that's something we're going to keep tracking as we do this development plan. And how could you demonstrate a greater ability to communicate persuasively with others? So that A over B, and quite wide A over B, will be very direct. So have they adequately used the right language to influence a customer, or are they just delivering a very direct message rather than potentially taking them on a journey and connecting with them? Who knows? Good to investigate. The person here is quite sort of moderately low C, but the job is very, very, very low C, indicating this job is incredibly high pressure. So it says here, how do you respond to a fast-paced work environment with multiple priorities? So potentially, even though this person works quickly, the role is even faster. So how are they coping with that gap? Keep in mind, this is a very wide job profile we're looking at. And again, I've highlighted some formality things as well. And again, not all these things will always resonate, but your jobs as managers is to really investigate, what's going on here? What is the gap? And how can we then take that and put it into that second wheel of the skills assessment and start to identify a plan and some actions? And what is this person going to actively do to counterbalance some of these cautions? So that's a bit of a wrap from me in terms of development planning, looking at development planning, but also where PI can fit in. And I think the power of what we do with PI is that we can really look at, their behaviors, but as you can see there, it's pace of work, it's influencing, it's making decisions, it's working with the team, it's delivering messages. We can start to look at all of those components of a person against their job and where some of those gaps will be. And it starts to give a richness of the data that you collect early on in that development planning stage to help truly understand someone and where they're at. So open to questions if there are any.